sidelines of the African Union Summit, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta reflects on the themes of the summit, critical issues in the East African region, and outlines his plans for Kenya.
I, Uhuru Kenyatta.
Kenya turned a new leaf on the 4th of March 2013. The country carried out its first general election under a new constitution peacefully. By doing so, Kenya proved critics that it predicted another election meltdown similar to the one that rocked the country in 2007 and 2008 wrong. In a vote that saw one of the highest turnouts in the country's electoral history, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta was declared winner of the presidential race by Kenya's Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. The outcome, however, was contested by Raila Odinga of the CORD coalition. The former Prime Minister and his supporters alleged that the presidential vote was replete with irregularities, shifting the spotlight to Kenya's new Supreme Court under Justice Willy Mutunga.
Despite my agents regularly updating and complaining to the IEBC about the incidences of electoral frauds, malpractices and irregularities they discovered during the elections, the IEBC neglected, refused or failed to act.
Mutunga's court returned a verdict that reaffirmed the declaration by Kenya's electoral body of Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner of the presidential elections. Again, Kenya remained peaceful in the face of this historic ruling. But statements made by a section of the United States and European Union officials ahead of the March 4th election had cast a long shadow on the campaign and raised temperatures in diplomatic circles.
We're all here as envoys. Our mandate is to favor conducive, good, fruitful relations for a prosperous Kenya. And that must be absolutely clear. The last thing we want is to interfere in the internal affairs.
The hardline position taken by some US and European Union diplomats ahead of the Kenyan polls, in the view of some analysts, turned the vote into a referendum on the International Criminal Court, where Mr. Kenyatta, Deputy President William Ruto, and radio journalist Joshua Sang are facing charges of crimes against humanity. Those statements were seen as an attack on Kenya's sovereignty, and they set the tone for the speeches made by regional leaders at Mr. Kenyatta's inauguration in Nairobi on the 9th of April.
But this is my personal opinion now. Furthermore, I want to salute the Kenyan voters on one other issue. The rejection of the blackmail by the International Criminal Court and those who seek to abuse this institution for their own agenda.
Late last month, the ICC topped the agenda of African leaders at the 21st Summit of the African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The leaders used the occasion to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the founding of the OAU, now the AU, to send a strong message to the court. Regionally, Mr. Kenyatta has promised to steer ongoing economic integration efforts within the East African community. He takes over at a time new oil and gas finds promise heightened economic development prospects for the region as a whole. Domestically, Mr. Kenyatta seeks to steer Kenya to become a middle-income economy with a Vision 2030 blueprint.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time. I want to begin by looking at the OAU, African Union's 50-year celebrations. Now, your father, Kenya's founding father, Jomo Kenyatta, was one of the architects of the Organization of African Unity. Looking back 50 years, have the ideals of the founding fathers of African countries been achieved?
I think I'd say they've partially been met, but I believe we still have a very long way to go, especially if we look at the point of view from the essence of the original charter was the independence, the liberation struggle. Yes, we have succeeded there. But in terms of some of the other issues, tackling poverty, tackling unemployment, equality, infrastructure development, prosperity for our people, I believe we still have very major challenges to overcome 50 years down the road.
At the time of independence of African countries, though, the driving force was liberation from colonialism, socio-economic development. What defines Africa today?
I think what defines Africa today is the fact that we have a resurgence in the feeling of our own unity and the feeling that we need together to challenge our common problems or to tackle our common problems. there is a deeper feeling that we need African solutions going forward. There's a deeper feeling of the need for integration, greater intra-Africa trade, greater movement amongst people within the African continent. I think there is a resurgence of that identity as Africa that was prevalent 50 years ago, but somehow we lost contact with that. And the need for us to begin to develop our resources and to make them work for Africans, as opposed to us being just a center of extraction and exploitation.
There is a feeling of a resurgence or a rebirth of Africa at the moment, though. Pan-Africanism is a very strong component of the AU 50-year celebrations, though. What is the significance of Pan-Africanism at this time when the world is more integrated? What is the significance, for instance, for Pan-Africanism for a country like Kenya?
I think the significance is the fact that we are beginning to understand that we have focused probably for far too long on feeling that solutions will come from the West. We have been feeling that our partnership should be more with Western or developed nations, as opposed to the fact of understanding that deeper integration, a deeper working understanding within the African continent is probably where our solutions lie. Both from a point of view of trade, as you know, today Kenya's biggest trading partner is Uganda, right? That one would not ordinarily recognize. Deepening that trade means that we have the capacity to expand our own manufacturing capacities. We have the capacity to be able to build on each other's strengths and tap this vibrant, growing, young population that is out there.
You're talking, though, about Uganda being Kenya's largest trading partner at the moment, but President Museveni himself did say previously that intra-regional trade within the EAC bloc is only still at some 13%. What is the challenge there?
That actually, to me, is not a challenge. That, and in there lies the opportunity, as I have said, for Kenya. Yeah? Our greatest trading partner, or our largest trading partner, is Uganda. But there is still a huge potential that still remains to be tapped, right? If you look, for example, now, I mean, with deeper integration, removal of our, trying to create the common market, we haven't even yet begun to tap the possibilities that are out there. Yeah, only 17% of our trade is amongst ourselves, right? Now talking about the East African region in total. When you look at food security, why do we need to look at food security from a Kenyan perspective? Let us look at food security from an East African perspective. There are a lot of areas out there that have a great potential of ensuring that they are capable of growing food. Why do we need to be importing rice, for example, from India or Pakistan? We have that potential within the region. That is, again, potential for not just food security, but also greater trade, again, amongst one ourselves. We have hardly scratched the surface. And if we really were to focus on it, I believe that's where the potential of our prosperity and growth really lies.
East African countries, though, have recently become oil and gas producing countries, and there is now a lot of international attention on the African continent in general, and some are likening it, though, to another scramble for Africa. Is that how you view it as well?
Well, indeed, there is that there is that feeling because of the newfound resources, especially with regards to our new gas finds and new oil finds that are being found within our own East African region. And even if I recall a recent meeting that we had in Arusha of the East African community, one of the agendas that was put on the table was that we need to recognize that there is now growing interest from other parts of the world to get a hold of these resources. And there is need for us to be able to exchange, as East Africa, our own experiences so that we ensure that we're not played against each other and that we ensure that we tap into our respective knowledge bank to develop a base that allows us to be able to exploit these resources for the benefit of the people of this region. So we don't want to end up, as has happened in the past, that we all then just focus ourselves on saying, wow, there's oil, let's just tap it out to foreign companies and foreign nations. And then yet at the end of the day, the resource is exploited, but we just remain with holes in the ground, and we just remain as poor as has been. We want to start developing policies and common policies to ensure that these newfound resources actually benefit our people today, but also represent the potential for future generations, as well, to be able to grow and develop.
Africa is now, as you mentioned, now the new economic frontier. And if you look at the statistics of last year, 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies were from Africa. How is a country like Kenya leveraging on that economic turnaround?
We want to ensure that we create an enabling environment that is able to attract investment. Right? To be able to say, and this is actually how we are marketing ourselves out there, that we now are focusing ourselves on infrastructural development. We have the fiber cable laid out to ensure that we are able to get financial services, for example, to set up and establish here, not just looking at the Kenyan economy, but looking at the greater regional economy. We're really focusing on developing the link between Kenya and the road link between Kenya and Ethiopia, which I think will be concluded quite soon. We're also looking at starting and establishing the link between Kenya again and South Sudan, so that we're not necessarily looking at attracting investment only from a Kenyan perspective, but more from a regional perspective. And I think this lies our greatest potential. We are now working, for example, with Ethiopia. They have the ghetto projects for hydro, where we hope to be able to tap into their hydro potential to help us meet our own energy needs. So these are some of the things that we're actually looking at that I believe have the capacity to not only create opportunities, but also for us to be able to expand and grow our own economies by double digit. The other area, again, of focus is trying to look at our educational curriculum to make it more appropriate, expanding our technology institutes so that we can have our people armed with the skills necessary to be able to take advantage of growing economies and to be able, like we keep saying, we need now more plumbers, electricians, and we need to be able to create the learning institutions that provide our young men and women with those skills, because those are the skills required to be able to tap now into the direction that we want to move in as Kenya.
All right. When you look at Kenya's economy, though, last year at 4.7% economic growth, you're talking about a double-digit economic growth in a few years. What will be the key drivers of your economy?
I think the key drivers, first and foremost, is our ability to tap the great potential that we have in agriculture. We are still largely a primary producing nation, I believe. Value addition is one area, especially with our agricultural commodities, is one area that we are looking at to be a key driver. Expanding our own agricultural base through less dependence on rain-fed irrigation to irrigation as the basis of agriculture, thereby expanding the areas that have that potential. Harnessing our livestock industry, again, is another area, ensuring that we have disease-free zones so that actually our livestock becomes less cultural as it has been, but we start moving more towards commercial livestock farming. The other great area of potential, of course, is technology-based learning. With the fiber that we have laid out throughout the country, we're hoping to have incubation centers across the country to try and tap again into our youth's ability to use technology to benefit themselves. The arts, again, is another area that we are really trying and wanting to focus on. And energy, and again, our newfound mineral wealth. This is another area that we also hope to tap in to be able to expand and grow, to be able to achieve the double digits that we are looking towards. Ultimately, what we are saying as Kenya is that we want to be able not just to look at the resources that we have, but to recognize that our greatest resource actually is our manpower. Right? And by being able to tool and to equip, especially our young people, and therein lies our greatest potential to achieve our economic growth and our economic agenda.
Kenya has been pursuing a look east policy, trading with China, working with China and the countries of the East since, let's say, 2003 and thereabouts. Is that going to still be a tenet of your foreign policy?
I think, and as I stated even in my inaugural speech, we will continue to trade with our traditional trading partners, but Kenya will indeed continue to focus on expanding our trading partners going forward, and definitely the East is a new growing market, and this is an area that we will continue to focus on and to see how we can strengthen our trading ties, our political links. We also believe that we have the capacity to get technology that is much more appropriate to our needs by looking at some of our new partners. We want to expand our horizon. We don't want to be limited just to our traditional partners. Not that we will delink ourselves, but we really believe that there is great potential to grow our capacity by looking at alternative markets, China definitely being key amongst them.
What do you see, though, as your relations with China in particular and the BRICS grouping?
I believe our relations are very good. Year on year, the trade between our two nations is growing. The bilateral exchanges we have in education, in sports, in culture, again, are growing year on year. We have got major projects, infrastructural projects on the energy side, road infrastructure, that we are working together with China, and we again hope to expand in that particular direction. So I believe that as of now, our relations are very strong, and my hope is that we can only strengthen them even further going forward.
During the run-up, though, to Kenya's election, Kenya's traditional partners had taken a position regarding your election. On what platform will your government be engaging with the international community moving forward?
My government intends to engage with all partners on the basis of mutual respect and reciprocity, understanding that each nation is sovereign, understanding that we live in a community of nations that need to respect one another, regardless of the size of those nations, and the understanding that the way to develop international relations must be on the basis of mutual respect and reciprocity. We need to be able to understand that the age or the era of dictating to small nations or trying to force down specific agendas are gone. We must be able to work together for the mutual benefit of our respective nations, and that will indeed form the basis of our own foreign relations going forward.
Culture Express. See the world in color.
He came with that idea. Why don't we play music? It keeps us from crime, and then we are using it to keep others from crime as well.
Some of the Slum Dramas members, they were street children. And right now, you cannot tell that they were street children, all because they chose that path.
I want to get a brief on matters regional now, and Kenya has played quite a central role in liberating Somalia. What do you see as the challenges in sustaining stability in neighboring Somalia?
I think the key challenge will continue to remain the fact that Somalia, for now over 20 years, has not had, strong institutions. We need to be able to work together with our Somali brothers to help them strengthen their institutions, their administrative institutions, to help start creating institutions that can manage, that can help them manage their own country forward, to be able to break the kind of clan systems that have existed and to create more of a Somali nation, a Somali feeling in and amongst themselves. So I think that will continue to remain the biggest challenge, and that is where Kenya also believes that not just in terms of providing and helping them bring about security and stability, but I think the greatest role we can really contribute towards ensuring a stable and prosperous Somalia is by helping them create the necessary institutions that they need to create civilian governance, right? So that they are now able to focus themselves on the provision of social services such as water, road infrastructure, education, proper financial services, and that really, I believe, will and is going to continue to be the biggest challenge facing Somalia.
Kenya's defense forces, though, are still inside Somalia. What role does Kenya see itself playing in Somalia now and moving forward?
The Kenya Defense Forces are in Somalia first and foremost to ensure that we protect our own national interests that has been threatened by the growing incidences of piracy and terrorism caused by, brought about by Al-Shabaab. And we will continue to make that a priority with our engagement currently in Somalia. But at the same time, we do hope that with the presence of not just the KDF forces, but the AMISOM forces as a whole, we will be able to create a peaceful and stable environment so that the many refugees who have fled as a result of the insecurity that has prevailed in some of those regions are able to return and once again join with their fellow citizens in building and developing their own country.
The question of refugees, though Kenya is host to millions of Somali refugees, how is your government going to address that? How are you going to address the question of repatriating the Somali refugees back to Somalia?
As you know, for a long time we have hosted many hundreds of thousands of Somali refugees. And it is in Kenya's interest to ensure that this situation is resolved in the shortest possible time. As Dadaab, for example, as there was one refugee camp alone in Kenya, which is equivalent to our third largest city. And the pressure that is causing on the local environment, the pressure that it's causing on our own resources as a nation is tremendous. So for us, the sooner that we can create an enabling environment within Somalia into which these refugees can return, the better for Kenya, and I also believe the better for Somalia. So this really will continue to remain a central issue to Kenya, given the burden that we are currently carrying with the great number of refugees that are currently based in Kenya.
There are other trouble spots on the continent, the Democratic Republic, Mali, the Central African Republic. They are few as compared to 50 years ago, of course, but there are still some trouble spots. Where is the challenge and how is Africa going to manage these conflict-prone areas?
Once again, I think even if you look at the Great Lakes region and the various conflicts that are ongoing there, I think you can see that the African continent and indeed the regional neighbors are beginning to take an increasing role in trying to bring about stability in those particular regions. But there again, ultimately, like I keep saying, we must ensure that all the initiatives that are being driven are actually driven with the idea that peace and security, not resources, must be the primary objective, to ensure that we bring about an inclusive arrangements, right? That bring the people together, that ensure that they are able to take advantage of the resources that God has gifted them together, rather than looking at the resources as being what drives the initiatives that we have in those countries. And that's why I keep saying the great need for us to be able to work together as an international community to ensure that, for example, just as the Somali constitution is saying, let's have a bottoms-up approach that brings an inclusive, brings the people, on board in bringing about the solutions, as opposed to initiatives that may divide the people and create greater instability. And maybe some of those are driven by less than noble interests, more resource-driven, as opposed to really being driven by the needs and the plight of the people in those particular regions.
Finally, Your Excellency, now Kenya has played a central role in Somalia, in the Sudans, and continues to play a role within the Great Lakes region. Where do Kenya's ambitions lie regionally and on the continent?
I believe that the future of Kenya lies within this continent. I believe that our ability to create a prosperous nation of Kenya lies in our ability to work together with, first and foremost, our region, and ultimately the African continent, and for us to be able to look for solutions within and amongst ourselves. So therefore, the focus on ensuring that we have peace, the focus on ensuring that we have stability, not just in Kenya, but also in the region, will continue to remain a key and central focus of my government. You know very well, Beatrice, we had our own problems in Kenya about 5 years ago. And I believe that what helped Kenya really get back on her feet and resolve her problems was not necessarily what the international community was doing, shouting and saying and clamoring, but the fact that the region and the African continent came in and helped us, right, work together as Kenyans to provide solutions. And here we are now, 5 years down the road, as a result of that support, as a result of that collaboration with our partners. And we are here having held, first and foremost, having been able to transform our constitution to take and to begin to tackle the underlying problems that were prevalent prior to the 2007 election. We've been able to reform our institutions and ultimately to hold an election that has been contested in court, but ultimately that has been accepted by all players. And I think our ability to have done that within 5 years has a lot to say about Kenyans, yes, but has also a lot to say about the input of our neighbors and the African continent. And that is why we also believe as Kenyans, we must also participate and work to ensure that we bring about the same, right, in our region and in our continent, to be able to open up our boundaries and really focus ourselves on that which will truly transform Kenya, which is increasing trade, increasing the opportunities available to our young men and women, working together to see how we can exploit the natural resources that God has given us for the benefit, of our people, current generations, as well as looking at future generations. This really is where the hope of this great African giant lies, and we will continue to keep that central in everything that we do going forward.
All right, Your Excellency, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.